for joining us for this virtual author event. We're thrilled to be able to continue to sponsor this event in these times. Before I introduce our special guest this evening, I did want to make mention of an exciting giveaway. At the end of this program, we will be giving away a signed copy of our author's book to a lucky random participant. So definitely stick with us through any freezing of Zoom or technical difficulties, okay? And now I am very, very honored to introduce our special guest, Meredith O'Brien. She is an award-winning writer, journalist, faculty member at Northeastern, and author of several books. She's the proud mother of 3 children, whom she raised with her husband here in Southborough. And from what I can tell, Meredith, you are also a very proud lifelong member of Red Sox Nation. Her most recent book, which she is discussing tonight, I know. Her most recent book, which she is discussing tonight, Uncomfortably Numb, chronicles her years-long journey toward a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis and discusses all of the challenges that continue with an ongoing, unpredictable disease. So please join me in welcoming our special guest, Meredith O'Brien.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, Ryan. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. I didn't know when the book was launched on March 7th, and I had one event in person, and then everything else evaporated, and you didn't know if it was going to happen or not. So I'm so glad that we were able to make this work. Thank you. And thank you, everyone who's dialing in. This is very, very cool. I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about how the book came to be, and then read some of the excerpts from it and take any questions if you have any. This book, it's got a very strange genesis. It began when I was working on my previous book, Mr. Clark's Big Band, which is about the Southborough, Massachusetts middle school jazz band. And it was about, I followed the middle school jazz band for a year after one of their members passed away unexpectedly. And I was interviewing Mr. Clark, the jazz band director, in the summer of August of 2012. And that was when I started to experience what I later learned were the first signs of multiple sclerosis while I was interviewing Mr. Clark. And later I told him this, he's like, I didn't give you MS. I'm like, I know. It just happened to coincide with my interview with you. But so the book traces that moment in August during an interview. We were at the Solomon Pond Mall at Ruby Tuesdays and talking, and I was getting to know him. And it took 2 years for me to get my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And then it finally took until April of 2017 for me to finish and complete and have the book published, Mr. Clark's Big Band. So that's the period of time covered in my memoir, is that entire period, because during that period I also started having MS symptoms, was diagnosed with it, and then had to come to terms with it as well. In order to write this book, I sat down and I interviewed my family. I sat down and I interviewed my husband. I interviewed my kids to find out things that were going on when I was not available, not around, to see how my illness affected them. I got copies of all my text messages that I exchanged with friends and family to try to recreate what that period of time was like for me. And I consulted a great deal with the National MS Society's website and learned about the disease, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a disease of the central nervous system, primarily the brain and the spinal cord. And they haven't quite pinpointed what causes it, but something triggers the immune system to kind of attack itself. And so it attacks the brain and it attacks the spinal cord and leaves what's called lesions behind. You've got this protective covering over a nerve, and the MS kind of attacks it and then interferes with the signals between the nerve and whatever it is attached to. And the symptoms that an MS patient experiences really depend on what parts of the brain or spinal cord sustain damage. So my MS may not look like your MS or someone else's MS. It really depends on where the damage is done. So the book starts with the first symptoms and then brings you through what was going on in my life through to what I call the uneasy piece that I made with how MS changed my life. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to read. I don't know if anybody has ever had an MRI before. Well, I'm a very claustrophobic kind of person, and when I was starting to have these experiences, I went to a doctor, and a doctor recommended an MRI, and I didn't know what went into a brain MRI, and kind of panicked when I found out that it involved what I call a kind of a Hannibal Lecter kind of mask that they put over you. So I'm going to just read from a section of the book about that describes these is the very early days before I had MS, but some of the ways that an MRI is one of the key diagnostic tests to help determine if you actually have MS. I am blissfully ignorant that I'll soon have a face contraption placed on me. I'm likewise unaware that in order to scan my brain, I need to lie motionless in a narrow tube that is laughably called an open MRI. It's slightly wider than a birth canal. Had I researched brain MRIs, it would have been very hard for me to remain calm and fight the potent urge I have to snake my way out of the apparatus as soon as the scanning begins. A kind technician, Bob, ushers me into the wide room with the gigantic machine in the center. It's a beast of a behemoth with a big hole in the middle where my head is going to be, I think. The people who will be doing the scan are behind a wall that's half glass. Their voices are only audible to me if they flip on a microphone. As I climb onto the narrow scanning bed that will be elevated and deliver me into the maw of the magnetic contraption, I wish I was behind the glass with the technicians chatting it up instead of lying on my back, being transported head first into an unknown future. This is before Bob puts cushioning next to my ears, like shoves it right down there to prevent me from moving. It's on top of earbuds, which are piping in news reports. You get to pick what you listen to, and I picked news. And I won't be able to hear those news reports once the machine starts going. Bob firmly clicks the hard plastic face cage into place. In some places, this thing is actually called a cage. Others refer to it as a mask. Cage seems more accurate because once it's placed over my face, leaving a narrow rectangular opening over my eyes, I feel trapped. If I wanted to get out, could I? I wonder, unable to move my head or look down to see how narrow this cage thing is at my neck and whether there's any wiggle room if I decide to bolt. Bob, of whom I'm now wildly envious because he gets to move about freely and has a full range of vision, places this small gray rubber bulb into my sweaty hands. It is attached to a cord. If I squeeze it, Bob tells me, he'll get me out of the machine immediately, my personal panic button. But I'm skeptical. Surely squeezing this bulb, which reminded me of a nasal aspirator I used to use on my babies to clean their noses when they were sick, would not result in the immediate release of me from my confinement. There would be a delay, I'm convinced. These negative thoughts pigpile on top of my mounting angst about being trapped inside a machine that will scan my brain, where I store all my secrets, my fears, my desires, my aspirations, things I don't share with anybody. My chest feels heavy. There's nothing directly pressing on it, but it feels as though I'm experiencing pressure, particularly as Bob sends the scanning bed upon which I'm now resting into the tunnel. I hear soft mechanical whirring as the machine swallows me up. I close my eyes because I honestly do not want to see how close the walls are to my body. I do not want to see the lights. I do not want to see via a mirror clipped onto my face cage the reflection of Bob and his cohorts, free and unencumbered behind that glass wall. I just want out. Eyes clamped so tightly closed, I'm likely forging new lines into my face. I listen hard for the news reports coming through the earbuds. I can hear the confident, full voice of the male anchor. Bob informs me via a speaker that the first scan will start in a few seconds. It'll last a couple of minutes, he says. Please don't move. Here's something they don't tell you before you are loaded into an MRI. The thing makes the most otherworldly racket you've ever heard. The thunderous nature of the magnets, which are spinning around you, combing through your tissues, bones, and organs, makes your body shake like you're inside a gigantic cocktail shaker. Sure could use a cocktail right now, I think. The noises astound me and completely drown out the newscast. Each different scan is examining a different slice of my brain from a different angle, comes with its own warped soundtrack. I try in vain to locate a melody or a rhythm, but can't. One scan emits a sound like the rapid fire strumming of a single note on an electric guitar, accompanied by one pump of an accordion. Another reminds me of the repeated sounds of a drumstick on a snare drum that I think makes me think I'm in a nightmarish loop of computerized error messages being chimed over and over again. My favorite, the one that sounds like angry protesters have gathered outside the machine and are pounding on it, trying to get inside. I feel the machine shaking, hear the menacing thumps, and really, really have the urge to flee. Plus, my face is starting to perspire, but I cannot wipe the sweat because of that damn face cage is in the way, and I've been asked to remain still. Although I can feel the cold air wafting over the length of my body, my face remains hot as I squeeze my eyes even tighter. I can still see the flash of the lights through my closed eyelids. I'm on that wacky Willy Wonka boat ride, and I'm not getting a chocolate factory at the end. Okay, now the next one, it took 2 years from the onset of the symptoms for me to get diagnosed. During that time, my symptoms went away. I had a variety of symptoms, including numbness and other symptoms, but then they came roaring back in the summer of 2014, about 4 months after my mother passed away from a very fast-moving cancer. We didn't expect it. It took 6 months from diagnosis to her passing. So it was kind of a tense period of time. We had, our family had gone to California. We live in the Boston area, and we had gone to LA for a family vacation. And on the morning that we woke up in LA, I got a call from a neurologist saying, "We found new lesions in your brain." And what that meant was that I had MS, but I really didn't allow it to sink in. I kind of went into denial, and he said, "Can you come in right away?" I said, "I'm in Los Angeles, I can't come in." When I got home from Los Angeles, I wound up in the hospital 2 days later, taken there by ambulance when I had a series of MS attacks. So what I'm going to read to you is an hour after I was released from spending 2 days in a Boston hospital after an MS attack. I finally am told officially that I have MS. And by the way, I changed all the names of the doctors. I don't name the hospitals because it's more about a patient experience rather than a specific organization. So it's meant to be able for anybody to be able to relate to it. Okay. Less than an hour after being discharged from the hospital, Scott, my husband, drives me to Dr. Walker's satellite office in a Boston suburb. It's the first time I've been outdoors since my ambulance ride. I'm unsteady on my feet and shield my eyes from the sun. I have no idea where my sunglasses are. "So does she have MS?" Scott asks as we're still lowering ourselves into adjacent chairs in Dr. Walker's office. "Well," Dr. Walker pauses, squints his eyes, knits his brow. "Yeah." He might as well have replaced "yeah" with "duh." His tone sounds as if we should have already known this, that it was obvious to anyone who had been paying attention. There it is. I have multiple sclerosis. It is in my head, literally, not metaphorically. No hedging, no hesitation. And side note, it's worth noting here, I had seen a neurologist 2 years prior who had suggested that my symptoms were psychosomatic. So that's why I'm mentioning it actually was there in my head, not just me being stressed out. Dr. Walker conducts a physical exam, but I'm kind of floating through it, over it, atop it, like I'm surfing on this new information. Waves, curling, ferocious ones, swirl beneath me, drowning out everything else. He's testing my reflexes, my arm and leg strength, my vision, my dexterity. But in my mind, I'm somewhere else entirely. There is a discussion about medications, but everything is obscured by that, yeah, from Dr. Walker. Thick pamphlets, booklets really, are handed to me. I accept them, but don't look at them, allowing them to fall softly into my lap. Long, complicated prescription brand names are bandied about. Tecfidera, Tisabre, Copaxone, Gilenya, Aubagio. Dr. Walker seems to favor Tecfidera, a new and powerful oral medication, which has provided positive results to his patients. I really do not want to have to take an injectable medication. That's one of the few things of which I'm certain. I nod like I understand, but I know nothing about any of these medications. I have trouble initially pronouncing their names. The pros and cons of the medicines that Dr. Walker explains fall out of my mind like grains of sand through a sieve. He tells me I need a blood test before I leave the office and that I should have another MRI as soon as I can schedule one at the hospital. I stumble literally outside back into my life, my new life as an MS patient. And it is Casey's 13th birthday. I have twins right now, and in this book they are 15. They're boy-girl twins. Abby is the girl twin here. And then Casey is their younger brother, and he was turning 13 at the time. So on top of feeling as though my ill health marred the family's vacation, traumatized the kids with the ambulance ride and hospital stay, I am sick on Casey's birthday. Scott and I immediately go from Dr. Walker's office to one of Casey's favorite barbecue joints to pick up a large takeout order. Any Firefly fans in the house? That's where we went. We got several pints of mac and cheese, tangy pulled chicken, pulled pork, sweet potato pudding with pecans and brown sugar on top, cornbread and corn on the cob, a veritable spread on which the newly minted teen could feast. When we got home, we discovered that the fixings for a lava cake that Casey wants for his birthday are all set to be assembled, courtesy of my friend Gretchen, who will forever be called the lady who saved Casey's 13th birthday. She didn't just provide the brownies, the vanilla ice cream, the whipped cream, and the hot fudge required to put the cake together. She bought birthday presents for us to give Casey after arranging to take all three of our kids for the day. Casey was occupied by hanging out with Gretchen's younger son, while Gretchen took my twins and her kids shopping for Casey's birthday presents, so Scott and I would have something to give him when he got home from the hospital. As our family of 5 gathers around our kitchen table and digs into the barbecue, Casey tells us all about the awesome day he had with his friends. His mouth full of mac and cheese, Casey declares, "This is the best birthday ever," only a 13-year-old can do. Okay. I have another example, excerpt, which is it's short. It's about this the symptom that I have, this MS symptom, which is a sensitivity to heat. Not everyone has it who has MS, but I do. So when I go out into hot and humid weather, I get immediately sick, and it's weird. It's almost like I'm the Wicked Witch. Like you can put me. It's like you're throwing the water at me. Instead, you're just throwing me outside in the hot and humid weather, and I just disintegrate. And that was one of the things that took me a long time to come to terms with and to stop fighting. I was constantly trying to say, oh, that's not going to stop me. Oh, I can overcome this. And then I would get sick again and again. And finally, I had to learn how to manage it and make peace with it. So I'm going to read, I was going into a bookstore. If there's an independent bookstore anywhere, I'm always there. So I went to, my family and another family rented a house in Martha's Vineyard in the summer of 2015. And my husband, Scott, and I decided it was only a couple blocks walk to the Edgartown bookstore. And so I said, let's go. I want to go see the bookstore. But it was a hot and humid day, and Scott was hesitant, but I'm like, no, we can do it. Let's go. And then this is what happened when we're inside the bookstore, which had its front door open, but it had one air conditioning unit. And then this is how it felt to kind of have like a mini attack in the middle of a store. I noticed a tingling sensation in my left side, prominently in my left leg and arm. Warmth oozes from my core outward to the surface of my skin as I suddenly feel as though my tank of energy has been aggressively drained. I need to sit down. I find a rickety wooden chair not too far from that inefficient air conditioning unit, but right in the way of the customers who want to walk around the edges of the bookstore. I try to make myself smaller, hunch down, push my legs together and my arms inward, worrying that they are judging me, wondering why I'm sitting on my rear end, why I'm so lazy, why I'm blocking their way. In all likelihood, though, no one's judging me. It's probably just me judging myself, annoyed by my need to sit down, by my sudden need to cool off, a need that's escalating exponentially as the seconds pass. I silently urge Scott to hurry up, to finish looking at whatever he's looking at, the item he's not planning to buy, when my brain functioning goes haywire. I am starting to feel lightheaded even while I'm sitting here, not exerting myself. I'm feeling woozy. All I can think about is cool air. But how many stores in downtown Edgartown have air conditioning? Not many, I'd venture to guess, thinking of the strong Yankee roots of the island. When Scott is finished with his browsing, he finds me. I extend my right arm out to him, a silent plea to help me get to my feet. I hate asking for help, but at this moment, I need it. My limbs aren't moving like they should. I see stars across my field of vision when I, with tremendous difficulty, get to my feet. Moments after we emerge from the bookstore into the moisture-rich air, things quickly worsen. I am not at all well. I have the look of a person who has over-imbibed as dizziness and instability overcome me. My vision blurs, my stomach lurches. I think I'm going to vomit. I need to get out of this heat and humidity, but don't want my MS to make Scott prematurely go back to the house. I see a clothing store not too far away on the corner with its doors closed. It must have air conditioning, I think. Let's go there, I say, trying not to let on how badly I feel, although I'm leaning on him pretty hard. Once inside the store, I realize this is fruitless. There are no chairs onto which I can collapse. The shelving units don't look like they can hold me up, and I need to lie down. I worry I'll faint on the sidewalk and cause another scene like the one in Santa Monica, which is where my family went the summer before, where I looked like I had passed out on the grass. Or perhaps I'll get sick to my stomach like I did at the Hollywood Bowl. That was a fun trip. The California trip was a fun trip while I have my MS attacks. How I look to others worries me. I worry that I'll look like I'm drunk or lazy or incompetent or overly sensitive as they see me wilting in the heat and humidity. I worry about inconveniencing those around me, ruining their evenings, their vacations, their dinners, their birthday celebrations, their lives with all of these MS-related needs. I worry about being this burden on the sidewalk. Okay. Now it's not all down and sad, and there are funny, lighter moments here as well. And the last segment I'd like to read to you is about some of the rash decisions I made during this time frame, which I didn't always make the best decisions while I'm trying to deal with this new disease. I had a change in employment. My mother passed away. My father wasn't feeling great. And I was just looking for something to be positive about. Now, we had, at the time, at the end of 2014, we had a dog named Max. We still have him. He was 5 at the time. Max is a Havanese Wheaten Terrier mix. And I came up with this brilliant idea that we need to adopt a puppy. And it was in December when I started to lobby everybody. And everybody's like, come on, really, a puppy? And I became obsessed with it, and so this story is how I tried to channel the negativity I felt into getting our family a second dog by the name of Teddy. Well, we nicknamed him Ted, changed his name. It was Fraser, which is a terrible name, but you'll get that in a second. So this is about how I saddled us with a second dog. I find myself thirsty for a gleaming distraction from the gloom that adheres to the folds of my brain like barnacles. I seek out a solution in the squirming, yelping form of a puppy. However, my notion of adopting a physical embodiment of hope and life is not uniformly embraced by the people with whom I live. Scott thinks Max is plenty canine for us all. 2 of the kids think Max will feel slighted and displaced by another dog. Only 1 kid agrees that adopting a puppy would allow us to focus on something other than death and illness. I persist, I press, I lobby, I forward to my family members images of puppies from animal rescue sites that are so sweet, your teeth ache just by looking at them. I scan websites in search of a dog age 1 or younger, onto whose small shoulders I will place the burden of trying to erase the pall that has become my unwelcome shadow. I become fixated. Actually, I think my family would call me obsessed, but I check the websites multiple times a day for available dogs, ready to pounce on a new listing. I eventually win the battle within the household as everyone reluctantly consents to moving forward. This is what leads us to Fraser. Fraser, a slight, bony, brown, tan, black and white 2-month-old, is described on the animal shelter website as a mini schnauzer mix, mix being the key word. The American Kennel Club website tells me that miniature schnauzers are, quote, friendly, obedient, and smart, unquote. They're the 6th most popular breed in the United States, one which has medium energy and small size, medium energy. I gaze at the charming photos in the mini schnauzer puppies, which spark all kinds of gooey maternal feelings. Not a scintilla of negativity can flourish when you're looking at puppies, which is a side note, can explain why so many dogs are being adopted right now, because everybody wants something happy and fun. I filed the adoption application for Fraser and then emailed the listing to Scott in that order. When I speak with Scott later, I hear the hesitation in his voice. He is so obviously not on board with this, although he's going along with it for my sake. I ignore his hesitation because I have my puppy goggles on. On the last Saturday of January 2015, the whole family, including Max, climbs into the car, drives a half hour to a shelter in a small Massachusetts town to meet Fraser. He's a floppy-eared little armful with oversized eyes, cowl-like pink and tan patches across his soft belly, tender pink paw pads, and a curious jauntiness in his step that lifts a bit to the right. Max is unaware that by virtue of the fact that neither dog is snarling, this little guy is going to come home with us. Without second guessing, I take Max's neutrality as an endorsement. An hour plus later, we're in the warmth of our kitchen, and Max looks enormous as the newly renamed Teddy sniffs at his fluffy, feathery tail. Teddy, we coo at him, attempting to orient him to his new name. It was only after nightfall, which arrived shockingly early in the dead of winter, when I remember with bracing clarity, potty training. I conveniently blotted out of my mind all the work that's required to train a puppy with a teeny little bladder to relieve himself outside. I gave no consideration, nada, to sleep and crate training. In my quest to find a puppy heart to heal my own, I blinded myself to reality. There's a lot of that in this book. It is a shock to my system when Teddy starts whining in his crate, the one into which Scott and I put a cushy dog bed and situated on the floor next to ours. The reality of puppyhood calls with a vengeance at 2 a.m. when I must carry Teddy outside and over the snow to which his paws seem sensitive. I'm gonna have to do this for weeks, I think. The cold air bites at my nose and at the exposed parts of my neck, which is quickly losing its fresh from the blanket's warmth. We adopted Max 5 years ago in the late summer. We didn't have to do any of this carrying over the snow or bundling him up before taking outside. As I wait for the petite creature to empty his bladder, I finally grasp what I've done. I'm 5 years older than when we adopted Max. I now require much more sleep and become fatigued much more quickly. Dragging myself out of bed is much harder now than it was then. A few days of getting up in the middle of the night with Teddy is going to render me sleep deprived, non-functional, and super cranky. The burden of bringing Teddy outside in the middle of the night will have to fall to Scott. When I put this all together, which was I did at 2 a.m. outside in the snow-covered deck, I finally understand that this is one of the reasons why Scott was against this new dog thing in the first place. Okay, so those are the couple of segments that I wanted to read to you. When I spoke with Ryan before he mentioned, I have put the links of where you can, if you're interested in getting a copy of the book, it's at my website, Meredith don't forget the E, O'Brien.com, and all the places that you can buy them are on the top of the blog. Tatnuck is the local place that I go to, Tatnuck in Westborough, and they had said they will sell signed copies from me. You'll also see a link to a bookstore in San Francisco, and the reason you see that is because I belong to a group of authors named Ryan just put it in the chat. He put down my website chat. I belong to a group called Lockdown Literature, and it's a group of authors whose books all have come out in the middle of a pandemic. And we've had an email group. We were kind of like a support group at first, but then we started kind of organizing, and now we have an Instagram page and a Twitter page, and this bookstore in San Francisco called The Bookseller has a Lockdown Literature store within a store. So that's the official bookstore of Lockdown Literature. So that's also at my website as well. But yeah, so that's just kind of a little glimpse of the diagnostic period of MS, some of the symptoms and some of the familial experiences. Now, Val, do you have any questions? Someone submit any? I know that Ryan said you had read the book and you might have some questions for me.
Yes, I do, but actually, since you just mentioned about symptoms, there is a question from one of our participants, and she is wondering if you would like to share with us some of the first symptoms that you experienced. So when you were at the Solomon Pond Mall,
Sure.
Meeting Jamie Clark. Great, and just before you begin, Meredith, if anybody who's here tonight with us has questions, feel free to use the chat feature and you can write them. Ryan and I will monitor them, or you can also indicate with the reaction, the hand up. Let me see if I can get that for you. But that's a clap or a thumb, something to indicate that you have a question, okay? So back to that question about first symptoms that you were experiencing.
Right, when I was interviewing Mr. Clark, I was sitting in an air-conditioned restaurant and I noticed something strange about my left leg, my shin area. It felt like, you know, that feeling after a limb goes to sleep and it's kind of just dull. And I'm like, that's strange. And beneath the table, I'm supposed to be paying attention, but I'm suddenly noticing this. I rub one shin across the other. I had capri pants on because it was summer. Like that, it feels weird on my left leg. So I try to keep focusing on the interview. And when the interview ends, I walk outside into the heat and humidity, and I notice that the capri pants, where they're just beneath my knee, it's hitting the left knee, but I'm really not feeling it. And it just feels off. So, and over the next couple of days, this numbness starts to spread down like up my side, up my leg, and on my arm. And the best way I could describe it is that imagine you put on tights or something over your leg, and then you pretend you're going to shave your leg. You can feel the razor touching you through the cloth, but it's kind of dulled, like someone took the volume and turned it down. And I'm like, that's strange. And when it started to spread and then it didn't go away, I thought I probably had either a pinched nerve or Lyme disease or something, because there are a lot of ticks around here. So I went and saw a primary care physician, and she did a panel of blood tests. She did a physical exam, and she's the one who recommended the MRI. The MRI initially they called it a mass, which was terrifying. They called and said, we found a mass at the base of your brain where you attach the spinal cord. I'm like, what? And so then they said, go see a neurologist. And I saw a neurologist, and this guy said, we don't know if this is new or old lesion. He called it a lesion. And he didn't think that the way that I was presenting was like MS. He didn't think it seemed like an MS case. And he said, unless you get new symptoms, come back to me in 6 months. I really don't think that this is MS. And when I had this feeling about him when I was talking to him, and it was confirmed when I got a copy of my medical records later, because in my medical records, when he sent a note to my primary care physician, he wrote that he thought that most likely the cause of what I was experiencing was psychosomatic in nature. So that's kind of where it was initially, before I found out later that there's now they now call what I had clinically isolated syndrome. If you have one lesion but other symptoms, that they now keep closer tabs on people when that happens. But at the time, I didn't think, I just thought I was being stupid. I'm like, oh, maybe I really didn't feel all that. Maybe I really don't have anything wrong with me. Maybe it made me second guess everything. So that's how it started. And then those symptoms ebbed away for a while, but then came back 2 years later. And I guess that's pretty typical, a typical progression for someone's MS diagnosis, is for some symptoms to show up, go away, and then come back.
Thank you very much. That sort of dovetails with another question that I see about how long it took doctors to diagnose the exact type of MS that you have. So this wasn't you have a diagnostic, you have a straightforward answer kind of situation. There's a lot of hand-wringing that was going on in between. Right. As I was reading your book, please.
Yep, go ahead. No, tell me, you can finish.
So you're a journalist, and you're trained in the behaviors of research and fact-finding, and that can take you down a lot of paths. How did that help or hinder this experience of coming to a diagnosis, and for you personally, acceptance or somewhat of a peaceful coexistence with this chronic disease?
Right, like as a journalist, I tend to over-research everything. Like I want to research, I want to know. But when it came to actually getting diagnosed, I kind of went into this denial. It's really strange. Like in the spring of 2014, 2 years after those first symptoms, when I started getting a return of numbness, when I started getting these strange feelings in my abdomen, in my torso, and the numbness, like something was really wrong. I could feel something was strange in the way things felt, the way my hand felt, the way my left foot felt. And I decided I need to see if, despite what that neurologist said, I think something's wrong. And there was that one thing in my brain. I didn't manifest that with nervousness. So I looked up, I found someone who had worked with multiple sclerosis patients, and I set up an appointment. And he ordered a new MRI, and then he met with me and did a physical exam. And there's this moment where he said he was walking me out. He didn't say I had anything, but he had this pamphlet in his hand, and he was like, he was going to give it to me, and then he took it back, and then he went to give it to me, and I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? And then he just says, well, here. And it was a pamphlet for newly diagnosed multiple sclerosis patients. And then when he handed it to me, he said, you don't have MS, but, and then he just handed it to me. So I think my brain just went, unless you tell me I have it, I don't have it. So I'm going to pretend I don't have it. And then I had the MRI and never got the results before I went on my vacation with my family. I was a pill. I kept calling them and saying, I'm leaving on a vacation. Can you please tell me what the results are? And then I got the results first morning in Los Angeles. And within 10 days, I was in the hospital and found out that I did have MS. And even between that MRI that I had before I went to California, and then the one I had after I'd been hospitalized, even more lesions had sprung up in that short period of time. So during that period in July and August, when I didn't have any medication, the MS was creating more lesions in my spine and my brain. And it was only taking what they call disease modifying treatment, DMT, that helped kind of arrest the spread, at least temporarily helped. And I had to go and take because my situation was so bad that summer, I also had to go in and get infusions of steroid treatments to help stop the inflammation that was going on. Because when you have an attack, when you have a new lesion, the areas can become inflamed, and the steroids help to calm that down. So then it took 2 years from that to finally get the diagnosis. But then I still went through a period of, okay, I can research it, and I'm researching it as a journalist, but there was a disconnect between my research and what I accepted about my reality. And it took a while for me to allow them to come together.
Yeah, it's just very difficult, right? Life is still happening. And in your book, you discuss a lot of very stressful things that are happening in your life. You know, any one of them could have been enough, you know, to fill a plate, right? And you've got this ongoing saga about your own health, which is always a very scary proposition. Another question I see from a participant: when did you start putting the book together? After you started the symptoms, or was it, you know, slightly before? So you went to meet Mr. Clark at the Sullivan Pond Mall. So you were starting.
He's the origin. Well, it's a weird kind of convoluted story. Like I said, I made a lot of very rash decisions during this time period. And in the spring of 2014, I was still working on the Mr. Clark Big Band, but my mother died. I didn't get a contract renewal for a position I thought I would, so I was suddenly without a teaching position. And then my dad has some health issues. Then I get sick. Then I have MS, and I'm just sitting at home going, what does this mean? Like, what is happening to my life? It's completely out of control. And one of the things that I had been told by the place where I worked was that I didn't have what's called a terminal degree. I was teaching English and writing at a university. I have a master's degree in political science, but a terminal degree is the highest degree you can get in a field. So I didn't have a master's of fine arts, which is in writing. And I was like, and so I hate being told no. So I said, I have to get that degree. I have to get that MFA. And then no one can say I don't have a terminal degree. So it was kind of this sheer coincidence. A writer friend of mine from Western Massachusetts was a writer in residence at an online MFA program affiliated with Bay Path University in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. And they had a program, they were just starting an MFA program in creative nonfiction. And I said, I want to do that. I can do it online. I can do it from home. Even if I'm sick, I can do that. So originally, my thesis was going to be the book about the band director, Mr. Clark's Big Band. But I happily got a publisher for Mr. Clark's Big Band. And that was going to be way before I graduated. And I said, well, I can't submit a book that's already published as a thesis and workshop that kind of phony workshopping for months if it's already out and getting published. I need to come up with something new. So what was right in front of me was this new experience. So in the fall of 2016, I started taking notes from that point, but then researching everything that had happened before. And within 9 months, wrote the very first draft of this memoir about MS. So I was writing anything that happened from the fall of 2016 through the spring of 2017, I included in my memoir. And I was writing it as it was happening, but everything that happened beforehand, I had to go back and recreate and try to, like, there were parts where I'm talking about my relationship with my mom, and my mom had passed away. And I went back and looked at her. She had some date books. I looked at exchanges we had, and I tried to recreate that part. But the book just kind of was, I never intended to write a memoir. It just kind of, because life conspired to make me a memoirist. So it's a really strange story.
I mean, you're a force to be reckoned with, Meredith. As I was reading, you mentioned frequently in the book the fatigue that you've experienced, and this isn't just I need to take a cat nap. This is all-consuming, debilitating need for sleep, and yet you're a mom of 3 young adults, a wife, working, graduate school, your dad's not well, your mom's passed away. How did you, how did you pull it all together? In your head, which, is maybe a scary notion for you at that time. Was it a salve for you to be able to write this story, even with the lack of sleep that would, pursue? Or
well, I think it was, because it gave me some semblance of, like, being able to write. I feel very alive when I write and when I'm creating, and it gives me a purpose. And with this memoir, I didn't have a deadline. I didn't have a time frame. I had to finish it. And working on it and working on my master's program, it gave me something to do. And when I had the fatigue, I could do it like we're all working now, in my pajamas, in my bed, with my laptop. Nobody was looking at me. It's very much, I think that was like a dry run for this COVID quarantine. But you can ask my kids, who would tell you that during this period of time, there wasn't a lot of cooking. There was a lot of, here, take this, go get some takeout. There was, my younger son would tell me, actually he wrote a college essay about it, about how I was so tired a lot of times he had to find rides with other kids. All 3 of the kids were in sports and a lot of activities. And there were a lot of times I couldn't make it. I just couldn't make it. There was one period of time I started teaching one class in 2015 at Northeastern, and now I teach more. But I taught a class, and my semester ended. It was a fall semester, and I got really cocky, and I thought, oh, I finished my teaching. I finished my MFA class. I have energy. I'm gonna make Christmas cookies. I'm gonna shop for the house. I'm gonna wrap everything, and then I go to show up to my older son's senior year Christmas concert. And that was the biggest moment where fatigue really, really struck me, and I realized I can't do that kind of thing anymore. Before MS, I used to just drink coffee all the time, constantly drinking that, or Diet Cokes, Diet Pepsis, just go. It didn't matter, put on lots of makeup, hair in a ponytail. I just went. And then that was the moment I realized I couldn't do that anymore, because at that concert, my brain just started to say, no more. I started to have a conversation with a music dad, And it was almost like an out of body experience. I don't remember what I was saying. I didn't know what I had said. I started to feel like my legs were giving out. And I said to my husband, I have to go now. I can't walk. I can't move. I can't think. And he almost carried me, but kind of dragged me to the car. And then I just went to bed for days. And I was like, wow, okay, I can't do that again. And of course I did, but then I learned, it took me a while. It took me a long time to realize I can't do this. I have to pace myself. And the writing was those things I really needed to do to feel like I was moving forward and doing something. But the fatigue really made me dial back on what I was doing. And I fought it for a long time, just like I fought the heat and the humidity. And then I realized I'm wasting all this time fighting my MS. I just have to roll with it, as much as I don't like it. And I don't like having to cut down what I do. I don't like not being able to make, like my mother was a gourmet cook. Every holiday was beautiful and tons of beautifully homemade food. And here I am feeling like a slug because I have to call up and order pre-made food for something. And I'm not making my own bread or doing my own things. And I had to come to terms with, okay. That's what I can do. I can't do everything anymore. And so.
Another question, continuing this vein, one of our participants is asking, so now that you've somewhat adjusted, right? You've experienced this disease for some time now. What are your biggest challenges dealing with MS now?
Well, it's the unexpected nature of some of the symptoms and when they might flare up. Like, I don't know if on a given day, if a symptom is going to flare up and cause me to have to cancel and not go out. Like there might, before all of this, when we used to go out of the house and meet people at places, I would have friends say, hey, let's meet at Startline Brewery. Let's all go hang out. And I'd be really excited. But then by the time it got there, I was exhausted and I couldn't go. And I'm like, oh, I did. And so that affects me. And I still have, I still have moments where I don't know. For example, one of the things that one of my symptoms is, and I don't really completely understand why I have it, but I have trouble with stairs. When I try to walk upstairs, it's like my legs are filled with jelly and I can't, it's really hard to walk upstairs. I can walk flat on a flat plane, but going upstairs or inclines are really hard. And then when you combine or throw in any heat and humidity, it's really hard for me to do that. And I teach at a school, and there will be like, if I have to go upstairs, I still struggle with, sometimes I have to pull myself up the stairs and pray my students aren't looking at me like, what's up with her? Why is she acting like that? Or if I'm outside. And I actually did have to get a handicap parking placard for my car, and I use it in hot and humid situations when I literally will get sick outside. And if I want to make it from the parking spot to the grocery store without collapsing, and because I know there's air conditioning in the grocery store, then I use the pass. Or at school, when I know that I'm going to have to climb stairs, I'm going to have to be standing for an hour and a half and teaching, I don't want to show up to the class already ready to pass out or throw up in front of them. That would be fun for them. So I have to make adjustments to my life accordingly. And MS is just very unpredictable for me. And I have to roll with it, which is not something that's my specialty, rolling with things.
I think that's true for a lot of us, but I can see in a particular way for someone with a chronic disease that has a very unpredictable quality about it. And it struck me in your writing, at points when you were trying to sort of preemptively take care of things. So you mentioned being a teacher, and at one point you're in a classroom, and I think it's the winter, and you've been able to buy short sleeve dresses to make sure that you don't get overheated, because it's something I never would have thought about. You enter your workspace in a large lecture hall or any classroom at a university, you have no idea what the temperature is going to be like. You mentioned too that your kids were starting to complain, like, it is freezing here.
Yes.
What is going on? It's so cold. That's a daily experience, and when you're living with other people, those are the kind of things that, can maybe make or break an experience, an occasion, a lecture that you're trying to give.
Right.
Those are like ticky-tacky details of life that you're kind of having to deal with and maybe try to control or be prepared, like a Girl Scout, right?
Yeah, I'm always I have tons, like this is sleeveless. Like I have tons of sleeveless shirts, sleeveless dresses, layers upon layers and I'm sure students are like, why is she wearing a summer dress? It's 10 degrees outside. But I'm one of those New Englanders who brings in iced coffee in the middle of winter, because I take the iced coffee, and if the rooms are hot, because sometimes in the winter they turn the heat up and then the windows don't open in some of the classrooms, that I take the iced coffee and I put it on my neck. Try to do it casually as one can in a classroom. Or I will sometimes bring in an insulated lunch bag and have ice packs and put them in my hands. Because putting them on the palm of my hands will cool me off. Trying to do it discreetly. Sometimes I take desks or chairs and I wedge the doors open to try to get some air circulation. Once I was very happy that I had a classroom that I could control the thermostat. I turned it down to like 65, and I heard another student say to another one, why is it so cold in here? And I just pretended I didn't hear it, because actually it's better for them, because if it's warmer, the students fall asleep and then I have to walk around and be loud to keep them awake. But yeah, it's very unpredictable at whether it's going to be too hot for me or whether I'll be able to handle it. But I do have an array of things. Like once I went to at the end of the school year, again, in normal years, my kids' high school would have banquets for every sport that they participated in. And one year my older son and daughter were doing outdoor track. And they usually had a banquet outside, but it was thundering and lightning, so they were in the school gym, and the gym was roasting. And friends of mine who knew that I had MS and I was heat sensitive kept bringing me new cans of soda and seltzer, because they were cold, and I would just use them as ice and put them on my neck, because otherwise I would have to leave. I would be sick. And so I would just use them. So it's just, I learned to bring ice packs with me, bring cold drinks with me. And I even have this really hideous looking cooling vest, which it doesn't look right. It's got these ice packs in the back, and you put it on, and it looks kind of like tactical gear. And I once put it on and wore it to get myself to the beach, and people looked at me like, what is she wearing? And then you take it off, it's got this Velcro in the front, and it looks like you've got stuff in the back. It's very ugly, but it helps me to get from point A to point B if I have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet it sounds like you have gotten very creative, right?
Yeah.
New ways of dealing with life. You do mention, there's a question here, and you do mention a little bit in your book about your employers, and if you're able to answer, have you told your employers, and what are the challenges that come with that? Well,
it's hard. The MS Society has a lot of material on its website about this, and they're very cautious. They say once you tell people, you can't take it back. And some people have a very negative perception of what multiple sclerosis is and may use it as an excuse not to give you a promotion or not to keep you on staff. And if you need an accommodation, you can legally get one. But I didn't want to tell my employers for as long as I could, just because I didn't want them to think of me as the person who has MS. I finally told, well, I had to tell them because this book's coming out, and so it's going to be out there. So I told my department, the admin, a lovely woman in my journalism department, and I told her that I have MS and I have this book coming out. And I said, and she said, really? Like, she didn't know. And I said, yeah. I said, the only time I've really had a hard time in class has been when it's really hot. But I haven't had to ask for an accommodation. I got my own handicap placard that I used, but I said I haven't had to ask for an accommodation. So I told her in January, I am still on the roster for the fall to teach, however fall teaching is going to look post COVID-19. But it's not like I have, for years I've been writing about MS, and it's been on my social media accounts, and I've written articles, but I haven't kept it a secret. I just didn't necessarily go out of my way to tell anyone at work until January that I have it. Hopefully it's not an issue. It hasn't been an issue. My students don't notice an issue in class, so hopefully it continues that way. But if I have to request an accommodation in the future, because I don't know what's going to happen, then I'll have to.
Mm-hmm. Here's a cute little question. How is Teddy doing now with the family?
Oh my God. Teddy is like caffeine on legs. He is so loud. And I love Teddy. But like my husband's like, yes, Teddy's your dog. I'm like, yes, I know. But he's we have to keep the window shut. Oh, my husband is coming out of the room. To let Teddy out now. Teddy is slinking away. He is the loudest little dog ever. And I've tried to teach him not to bark, but he does. And Max still, I don't think, was really thrilled. Ugh. Yes, this is Teddy. Oh. Teddy, say hello to everyone.
Hey, Teddy.
Yes. He's very sweet. He cuddles up to me all the time. Like, basically me working from home, he sleeps next to me. He is like a barnacle. He just attaches himself to me and follows me around. But he is doing well, and Max is now 10 and he's 5. So I can measure how long it's been since I had MS by how old this guy is. So Teddy's doing very well. Thank you for asking.
And sometimes rash decisions work out great.
Yes. Yes, I won't tell him he was a rash decision.
Let's see. Does anyone else have a thought or a question that they would like to pose?
Yes. I have some advice for you.
Excellent.
You get hot, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, have you seen them?
What's that?
No, what is that?
It's
I have not seen it.
Oh. Magnets. It's frozen.
Oh.
You keep it in the freezer. And you put it around your neck like that. Oh.
How long does it stay cold?
It's beautiful. In the summer, I can't go without this. It stays frozen for up to 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. They're a bit expensive. You can get them at Etsy, ETSY.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But my God, they are my lifesaver, because like you, I cannot take the heat.
I'm going to have to look into that, because that looks a lot nicer than the awful vest that I have. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had one of those too. They're awful.
They are.
Oh, they brought some really nice colored ones out now. I mean, they're about $50. But you know what? It's worth it. You're worth it, right?
I'm going into that. Thank you.
That was just something I thought, because a lot of people don't know about this.
Yeah.
And I can't be without it in the summer. Let me tell you another thing. I was diagnosed when I was 21, relapsing, remitting.
Mhm.
I went through all the same things you have done, steroids, but of course they didn't have all those medications in my time. I'm now 70.
Oh, wow. How are you feeling?
Terrible, actually. I've been going through very bad arthritis. I can't get up and down the stairs. I've been sleeping downstairs.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's bad. I can't get up the stairs. It really hurts. But for the longest time, I've had numb hands. And that is so annoying because you drop paper, you drop money.
Yes, I was klutzy beforehand, and now I'm getting klutzier. Yeah.
Oh my God. My father had a good name for me. Do you know what he used to call me? Hand-fisted
Do I want to
Harriet.
know? Oh.
No, I mean, I didn't know I had MS then.
Mhm.
And so, you know, that was his name for me, Hand-fisted Harriet. I said, thanks, Dad.
Oh.
Anyway, that's I got some stories I could tell you. Believe me. But anyway, try and get that because it really is useful. I actually have two. One in the freezer when I'm wearing one, and back in the freezer when I'm taking the other one out.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Best.
Are we good, Val?
Okay, I think there's maybe one more question and then we'll go to our concluding. Oh, I see another hand up. Okay, Drew, I've got one question ahead of you and then I'll get to you and then we'll do our giveaway. Okay. Question is, did the doctors ever think that you had something else such as lupus before, getting to your diagnosis?
It is, MS is tricky. It's not something that, it's more of a process of ruling other things out. And they did rule out lupus and they did rule out Lyme disease and a pinched nerve. And when I was in the hospital during my hospitalization, they did or tried to do they don't do it as much anymore, but a lumbar puncture, which is a way to try to diagnose MS, where you pull out the spinal fluid. And in my case, it was called a failed lumbar puncture because they weren't able to withdraw sufficient amount of fluid to measure it, but it was incredibly painful and done by an intern who I felt so bad for because I could hear her panicking behind me as I'm like, oh my God. But they used to do that regularly, but they now mostly, at least for me, we're using MRI diagnostic as a diagnostic tool. But it was pretty clear early on, at least my general practitioner thought I had MS. That original neurologist did not. But then when I came back a second time to another neurologist specializing in MS, he seemed to focus pretty quickly at that point. But yeah, I read a lot of stories of people who go through a lot of an array of autoimmune problems that are really hard to pinpoint. And it takes them a long time to eventually get the diagnosis, to the point where when I finally get it, in a weird way, you're happy because you know that you have something, that you're not just nervous, it's a real thing.
Right. Okay, Drew, I'm going to try to unmute you so you can ask your question. Okay.
I just pushed unmute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I loved your descriptions. I related to everything, especially the spinal tap at the very end, the lumbar puncture. I think maybe it's a rule of nature that those of us with MS we go in at a bad time. I went in on Memorial Day weekend late at night, and the brand new interns had come in that morning, and the first, spinal tap, they don't know what they're doing. They just sort of dig around. So yes, we trained the interns. On the issue of telling your employers, one thing that interested, or I, far enough long in my career, I could sort of look back with some detachment, but it is really true that there are people out there who think that you're diseased and you don't belong on the team. And I found that it was really my first experience as a privileged white male. I'd never had run into this mentality, but I realized in an academic setting like a university, there are very, very few, quote, handicapped people. And I didn't realize that, my God, there really are ethnic cleansers out there who really think we just don't want these people on campus. They look a little drunk if you look closely. They're asking favors. We're very sorry this happened to you, but this just isn't you just don't belong here. I mean, this is a place where healthy 18-year-olds belong, and not your type. So I'm not, that was uncommon, but that is really out there. And so I think that not telling my employer for years and years was good, because when or telling them informally, but as soon as you do anything formal, the bureaucrats who don't know you from Adam start thinking of you as a disabled person who doesn't really belong on campus. So,
right. I have not officially filed anything because I do not, I'm knocking on wood, because I haven't asked for an accommodation. I haven't asked for anything officially, and if I did, that might trigger Americans with Disabilities accommodation. So I haven't asked for that. But I've talked with my department, and like you said, they know me and they know what I can do, but other people in other departments have no idea. And that's part of my hesitance, because as much as we like to think we're all enlightened and we're all equal-minded people, there are a lot of us out there with invisible illnesses that people don't know that they have. Autoimmune diseases don't come with, they're not always visible to, we don't have signs that say, hey, I have MS or I have this disease. So it's a very tricky situation.
Okay. Great. All right. I think we have concluded a fantastic interactive event tonight. Thank you to everybody who has come and shared their thoughts and questions with Meredith. And Meredith, thank you for writing the book, for sharing your story. So many people, whether or not they have MS, just to go down that road of being a patient in an MRI tube, it's one thing to go for a regular checkup. It's another thing to sort of enter into what feels like a Pandora's box of diagnostics and being frightened. So I'm sure there are many people out there who are grateful for your book, and I know I am.
Thank you.
And speaking of your book, so we've got that giveaway, and our lucky winner is Robin Stewart.
Yay!
I'm coming off mute for this. Thank you so much, Meredith. I'm really excited. This was great.
Oh,
Really
I'm
enjoyed
glad.
hearing about your book, and now I get to read it.
Good.
And I'll share it with my mom, who's also on the call. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Great. All right. Well, I hope everyone is doing well in these uncertain times, especially for anyone who has other challenges to try to kind of manage. Be well, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And Meredith, a very special thanks again to you for taking the time to share your story with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for making time to come out tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.